What if I told you that the ancients never sat in silence to meditate the way you and I do today? They didn't close their eyes, hoping something would happen. They didn't count their breaths or chant mantras. What they did was more raw, more physical, more real, and far more powerful. They held a kind of wisdom about the body that we've long since forgotten. They didn't talk about chakras or the mind. They moved a single bone, not just any bone, but one that, when awakened, opened a doorway that is now completely sealed within us. At first, I didn't believe it either. I thought it was just another mystical tale, until I tried it, and I felt something shift inside me, something I had never felt before. It was as if my whole body remembered something ancient, like a memory not mine had been reawakened. That's when I understood why they didn't need to sit still waiting in silence, because the silence wasn't outside. It was right there, where everything begins, in the most forgotten center of your spine. Today, I want to show you what I saw, how you too can move that bone. But before I do, let me tell you where all this comes from. Not from books, from caves, from rituals, from dances and bodies that knew things we've lost. I'll never forget the first time someone mentioned the sacrum to me. It wasn't in a temple or an anatomy class. It was an older woman with sun-worn skin who lived in the mountains. One of those people who don't need many words to make you feel like you're standing before something sacred. She said, "You're looking up, but what awakens is below. Everything begins at the base." I didn't understand, or maybe I didn't want to, until she showed me a hand-drawn sketch on a piece of worn leather. It wasn't a chakra. It wasn't an esoteric symbol. It was a bone. It looked like a folded wing, and carved into it was a spiral. I stared at it in silence. She said, "That bone is the door. If you don't move it, you never enter." Later, I learned it was called the sacrum, a name that isn't a coincidence. It comes from the Latin sacrum, meaning sacred. The ancients knew this, not because they studied it, but because they felt it. Through tribal dances, deep breathing, and ritual walks through the forest, the sacrum isn't just a piece of your spine. It's your foundation, your base. It sits at the very root of your energy. 5 fused vertebrae forming a kind of shield in the center of your pelvis, like a bowl holding life itself. Did you know the Egyptians believed it was the first bone to regenerate after death? That the Greeks called it the throne of the soul? That in some shamanic rituals the body wasn't touched at all? Only sacred songs were sung around the sacrum. For centuries, this bone was the core of secret practices. But at some point, we forgot. We erased it. We replaced it with visualizations, surface-level exercises, and disconnected from the deep body. And when that connection was lost, a door quietly closed. But the body hasn't forgotten. It's just waiting. And when you learn to move this bone, not with force, but with intention, something inside begins to wake up. It's like a current that had been asleep, suddenly begins to pulse and whisper, not from the mind, but from somewhere much deeper. I felt it one night, alone on the floor. No music, no guides, just breath, just the body. Gently moving my pelvis, letting the sacrum soften. Suddenly, a wave of heat rose through my spine. It wasn't pleasure or pain. It was like opening a gate that had been sealed since before I was born. You don't have to understand it all right now. Just know this bone exists. It was called sacred for a reason. It holds a pulse, a key, a memory that no thought can replace. And that key is about to move. With you. This isn't about exercising. It's not dance. It's not stretching. It's something else. It's like moving something invisible, something that awakens when done right. That was my first mistake, thinking it was purely physical. Tilting the hips, swinging the pelvis, repeating motions like steps with no soul, and nothing happened. Until I remembered what the mountain woman had shown me without saying it directly. This movement isn't done with the body, it's done through the body, rooted in awareness. The sacrum doesn't awaken through effort, it awakens through presence. Picture this. You're sitting on the ground, not a chair, not a yoga cushion you bought online. Just the earth. No music, no noise, no guidance, just you and gravity. Your breath slows. You begin to feel your weight. You feel your sit bones touching the floor. You feel the base of your spine. Right there. That's the sacrum. You don't need to visualize it. Just feel it. It doesn't move like other bones, but it vibrates, and if you call it gently, it answers. Now let your pelvis rock slightly, just a little, forward and back, not exaggerated, more like a quiet conversation with your foundation, as if you were asking, "Are you there?" And the body, after years of silence, responds with a sigh. That response doesn't come from the mind. It comes from way down inside. This isn't something you chase with desire. It's something that arrives when you surrender to the motion. In ancient cultures, this gesture was part of everything. Before sleep, before the hunt, before love, before prayer. It was a way of aligning with life itself. I've seen it carved in stone, figures with curved spines, as if calling something up from the ground. And I felt in my own body how that tiny movement, that thing that seems insignificant, can release a force I didn't know was trapped. Some call it serpent energy. Others, inner fire. I don't name it anymore, because no word can truly contain it. What I can tell you is this. When you move your sacrum with intention, with reverence, something shifts. Your whole body reorganizes, like remembering a language you once spoke and forgot. I began doing it in silence, just a few minutes each morning, eyes closed, sitting on cold ground, and each time I finished, I felt more grounded, more alive, more here. Don't expect fireworks. This isn't a show. It's subtle. It's real. It's yours. You don't need to be fit. You don't need to be flexible. You just need to be willing. To move like the ancients did. Feet on the earth. Body listening to its story. Sacrum finally waking after centuries of silence. Because the true doorway was never in the sky. It's always been in your pelvis, and it only opens when you do. There's a moment. It doesn't always come the first time, or even the second. But if you keep going, if you surrender to the movement without needing a result, it arrives. It doesn't come with visions or flashing lights. It's much simpler, and that's what makes it so real. I felt it one night when I wasn't seeking anything. I was tired. The world felt heavy. I just wanted to breathe and let go. So I sat, like so many times before. Let my body lean forward, gently. Began to move my sacrum, as if caressing it from the inside. A tiny gesture, but something began to open. First heat, then a tremble, not in the muscles, but a subtle vibration rising through the spinal cord. And when it reached my chest, everything stopped. Time suspended. What I felt next, I can't explain it, but I'll try. It was like my body was here, but my awareness was one step beyond. The room, the air, the night, it was all the same. But my perception had expanded, as if the edges of reality had softened, and a new texture emerged between what's seen and unseen. A veil lifted, and I understood. You don't need to leave your body to enter another reality. You just need to enter the body you've always ignored. The deep body, the vibratory body, the bridge body, and the sacrum is the threshold. Years ago, if someone had told me this, I would have smiled politely. But now, I've lived it. And the most surprising part wasn't what I felt. It was what I remembered. Yes, remembered. Because this wasn't new. It was ancient. As if my soul recognized the path and whispered, "You've been here before." And I finally understood why the ancients didn't sit for hours in silence. They didn't wait for the mind to go quiet. They knew when the body moves with awareness, it opens the door. And that door doesn't lead to a place. It leads to a new way of seeing, more refined, more alive. In that space, everything feels sacred. The air seems to hum with a subtle song. You're not watching. You are. After that night, nothing felt quite the same. Not because I saw visions or lights or heard mystical voices, but because I discovered a place within me I never knew was always there. A space beyond thoughts, beyond words. And I found that it only opens when I move that bone with sincerity. That was when I understood. Movement isn't exercise. It's not therapy. It's an offering. Each time you move your sacrum with intention, You're saying to your body, I'm ready to enter. And the body, keeper of that ancient secret, lets you in, but only if you come from the center, only if you surrender to its inner rhythm, only if you listen more than you try to control. And when you enter, you realize you're not alone. Many walked this path before you, each leaving behind a silent trace. Now it's your turn to follow it, in that silence that feels more alive than sound itself. This is not about some perfect magical realm. It's about a different state of being, one where you and your body become allies again, and the soul finally has a place to rest. After an experience like this, you might expect your life to instantly transform. You want clarity, resolution, a shift in the outside world. But what I learned is both simpler and more honest. Nothing out there changes. The news, the bills, the unanswered questions, they remain. But you change. And once you change, once you felt your body as a sacred space, you can't walk through the world the same way. You can't go back to meditating with your eyes shut, hoping that something descends from above. You can't keep pretending it's all in the mind, all in lofty spiritual ideas, decorative philosophies tucked into books, because now you know there is a root, and that root is alive, and it moves. That was the real transformation. Not what I saw, not what I felt, but the return, coming back to ordinary life with grounded feet, speaking with others, but hearing the messages from the body too, returning to silence, but discovering it no longer feels empty. It pulses, it breathes, everything shifted. Not because the world changed, but because I discovered another way to be in it. A way that's more animal, more ancient, more real. And no one will teach you this in school, not in yoga class, not in online courses offering enlightenment in 7 steps. Because this isn't taught, it's remembered. And that remembering doesn't rise from your head. It rises from below, from the ground, from the bone. The sacred bone you've carried since birth. The one that holds everything else up. The one that existed before you even had words. There's something deeply freeing about realizing this. You don't need more theories, more systems, more paths. You only need to come home to yourself, to your body, to the place where spirit and matter are no longer separate things. I'm not here to convince you of anything. I have no evidence, no formulas. I'm only sharing what I lived, because if something in you responds, even just a flicker, then you'll know this isn't just a story. It's a call, a quiet call to awaken what's been sleeping in you, to stop escaping upward and start rooting downward, to stop searching outside, because what you're looking for is already vibrating within. It's in that bone, in that small movement, in that moment of surrender. The rest is practice. Not practice to become something, but to remember who you already are. And if something in these words echoed in your body, even faintly, then I invite you to only one thing. Move. slowly, intentionally, with your soul, and let your body guide you, because maybe, just maybe, the reason the ancients never left written instructions is because they knew the true teaching was already etched into your bones. All that was needed was for you to finally listen. Here's a rewritten version of your text in English, preserving its emotional depth and spiritual tone, but expressed in new words and phrasing. I drew my navel gently inward, as if my breath was reaching toward my spine. At the same time, I subtly lifted the center of my pelvis, like an invisible thread was pulling it upward toward the sky. The gesture was so slight that no one could have seen it from the outside. But inside, something sparked. A dense, warm, almost liquid energy began moving through my spine, as though that tiny motion had unlocked something forgotten. That was it. That small, internal movement. Not grand, not complex, but sacred. Because it wasn't about the gesture itself. It was about where it came from surrender, from deep listening, from a space within where control fades and the body begins to speak. In that moment, I understood what the old symbols pointed to: the spirals, the columns, the serpents, the wings, all metaphors for the awakening that happens when the body is finally touched from the inside. My sacrum became a bowl, my belly a glowing ember, my spine not just a stack of bones, but a channel between worlds. After that, I returned to that gesture many times, not as a technique, but as a wordless prayer. And each time, something different emerged. A memory, a wave of tears, or simply a vast, gentle silence that didn't weigh me down, but held me. It felt like my body was saying, "Thank you for coming back." And I saw more clearly than ever. This gesture isn't a tool to escape or transcend. It's a way to return, to live, to dwell, to ignite from within the book that has always been there, waiting to be opened. You don't need to move the same way. Your body will find its own gesture, because every body holds its own sacred script. And your key is waiting. All that's needed is that you stay with yourself long enough for it to reveal itself. And when it does, you'll realize it wasn't something new. It was something you were always meant to remember. Back to the bone, back to the root, back to the flame that never went out, only faded from your sight. Because once the body has moved, once the bone has spoken, once the energy has risen through the spine like an ancient tongue of fire, there is only silence. But not an empty silence, a different kind, one that sits heavier in your chest, that lingers, even while the world outside keeps shouting. That's where the real practice begins, not in the gesture, not in the peak moment, but in the return, in how you walk through your home, in how you respond when interrupted, in how you breathe through chaos, in how you hold someone's gaze without trying to control a thing. That is the challenge. Not awakening the energy, but living with it without shutting it down. Because after every awakening, big or small, comes the test. Not imposed from the outside, but rising from within. The body wants to know, did you truly hear it? Was that dance with the sacrum just a fleeting visit, or the beginning of a new agreement? And this agreement requires no vows, no ceremony, just one thing: daily, honest attention. Small, consistent, deep. It's so easy to forget. The world is full of loud distractions, screens that promise answers, voices that shout formulas, systems, solutions. And the easiest thing is to go numb again, to move on autopilot, to breathe without presence, to sit in silence with the body shut down. That's why this moment isn't a conclusion. It's a reminder. You don't have to recreate the full ritual every day. You don't need to summon the fire to keep the light alive. Sometimes, all it takes is a pause, a breath, a moment of awareness returning to your base, to the bone, to that place of gravity you now recognize as your own. And let that descending silence wrap around everything, not as a pause, but as an integration. Because once the body begins to speak, you can no longer ignore it. You'll feel it in your back when you speak through fear, in your chest when you don't say what's in your heart, in your legs when you walk away from your truth. And that feeling, that awareness, is your guide. The ancients didn't need manuals. They had the body, and the body was their map, their prayer, their mirror. You have that too, even now, even if you feel disconnected, even if this journey didn't bring fireworks. It doesn't matter, because the real transformation is the one that lingers when nothing dramatic is happening. It's what stays after the screen goes dark and life resumes. Maybe tonight, you lie down and don't do anything special. You just breathe. You feel the weight of your body, and maybe, without even trying, the sacrum stirs, the memory stirs, the codex lights up again. If that happens, don't explain it. Don't analyze it. Just stay. One breath longer, one silence deeper. Let it shape you, not to change who you are, but to remind you you've always been whole. You didn't come here to achieve anything. You came to live it all, from the bone, from the gesture, from you.